Welcome to Brainish English Stories.
This story was told during the hunting season at Chateau Bainville. The autumn had been rainy and sad. The red leaves, instead of making a crunching sound under the feet, were rotting because of the heavy rain. The forest was very wet. It smelled of musty air, rain, wet grass, and wet earth. The hunters, with their backs bent under the rain, had sad dogs with tails between their legs and wet fur sticking to their bodies. The young women, with their clothes soaked, returned every evening, tired in their bodies and minds. After dinner, in the big living room, everyone played lotto, but they did not enjoy it. The wind howled around the house. Then they tried telling stories like those they read in books, but no one could think of anything funny or interesting. The hunters talked about great shots and killing rabbits. The women tried hard to think of ideas, but could not come up with stories like the ones Scarazade told. They were about to stop this activity when a young woman, who was gently touching the hand of an old unmarried aunt, noticed a small ring made of blonde hair. She had seen it many times but never really paid attention to it. She touched it gently and asked, "Auntie, what is this ring?" "It looks like it is made from the hair of a child." The old lady blushed, turned pale, then answered in a shaky voice, "It is sad, so sad that I never want to talk about it. All the unhappiness in my life comes from that. I was very young then, and the memory is still so painful that I cry every time I think of it." Everyone wanted to know the story right away, but the old lady did not want to tell it. Finally, after they asked her for a long time, she agreed. "Here's the story. You have often heard me talk about the Santeze family, now gone. I knew the last 3 male members of this family. They all died in the same way. This hair belongs to the last one. He was 13 when he killed himself for me. That seems strange to you, doesn't it?" "Oh!" It was a strange family, crazy, if you will, but a sweet kind of craziness, the craziness of love. From father to son, they all had strong feelings which filled their whole being and made them do wild things, even commit crimes. This was in them, just like strong devotion is in some souls. There was a saying, "as passionate as a Santeze." You could see this by looking at them. They all had wavy hair falling over their foreheads, curly beards, and big eyes that looked at you deeply, though you could not say why. The grandfather of the owner of this hair, which is the last memory of him, had many adventures, duels, and elopements. When he was about 65, he fell deeply in love with his farmer's daughter. I knew them both. She was blonde, pale, and very pretty. She talked slowly, had a quiet voice, and looked so gentle, like a Madonna. The old nobleman took her to his home and soon loved her so much that he could not live without her for even a minute. His daughter and daughter-in-law, who lived in the chateau, thought this was normal because love was a family tradition. Nothing about passion surprised them. If someone talked about lovers who were separated or about revenge after betrayal, they would both say in the same sad tone, "Oh, how he must have suffered to come to that point." That was all. They felt sad about love tragedies, but never angry, even if they were crimes. One day, a young man named Monsieur de Gradelle, who was invited for hunting, ran away with the young girl. Monsieur de Santeze stayed calm as if nothing had happened, but one morning he was found hanging in the kennels among his dogs. His son died in the same way in a hotel in Paris in 1841 after being cheated by an opera singer. He left a 12-year-old child and a widow, my mother's sister. She came to my father's house with the boy while we were living at Bertillon. I was then 17. You cannot imagine how wonderful and smart this Santeze child was. It seemed like all the kindness and passion of the whole family were in this last one. He was always dreaming and walking alone in a big alley of elm trees leading from the chateau to the forest. I watched from my window this thoughtful boy who walked slowly, with his hands behind his back, his head bent, and sometimes stopping to look up as if he could see and understand things not usual for his age. Often, after dinner on clear evenings, he would say to me, "Let us go outside and dream, cousin." And we would go outside together in the park. He would stop quickly before a clearing where the moonlight shone on the woods, and he would hold my hand, saying, "Look, look. But you don't understand me. I feel it. If you understood me, we would be happy. One must love to know." I would laugh and then kiss this child, who loved me deeply. Often, after dinner, he would sit on my mother's knees. "Come, Auntie," he would say, "tell me some love stories." And my mother, as a joke, would tell him all the old stories of the family, all the exciting adventures of his ancestors. There were many stories, some true and some false. The family's reputation for love and bravery was the ruin of all these men. They were proud of it and felt they had to live up to the fame of their house. The little boy got very excited by these sweet or scary stories, and sometimes he would clap his hands and cry, I, too, know how to love better than all of them." Then he started to court me in a shy and gentle way, which everyone found very funny. Every morning, he would pick flowers for me, and every evening before going to his room, he would kiss my hand and say softly, "I love you." I was guilty, very guilty, and I felt bad about it all the time. I have been sorry for it all my life. I have stayed single, or rather, I have lived as if I was his widow. I was amused by his childish love, and I even encouraged him. I was playful, sometimes sweet and sometimes strict. I drove this child crazy. It was a game for me and fun for his mother and mine. He was 12. Think of it. Who would take this child's love seriously? I kissed him as often as he wanted. I even wrote him little notes, which were read by our mothers. He answered me with passionate letters, which I have kept. He thought he was a man and that our love was a secret. We had forgotten that he was a Santeze. This lasted for about a year. One evening in the park, he fell at my feet and, as he kissed the hem of my dress, he kept repeating, "I love you. I love you. I love you. If you ever lie to me, if you ever leave me for another, I'll do what my father did." And he added in a hoarse voice, which made me shiver, "You know what he did." I stood there shocked. He stood up on his toes to reach my ear, as I was taller than he was, and said my first name, Genevieve, in such a gentle, sweet, tender tone that I trembled all over. I stammered, "Let's go back. Let's go back." He said no more and followed me. But as we were going up the steps of the porch, he stopped me, saying, "You know, if you ever leave me, I'll kill myself." This time I understood that I had gone too far, and I became very quiet. One day, as he was blaming me for this, I answered, "You are now too old for joking and too young for serious love. I'll wait." I thought that this would end the matter. In the autumn, he was sent to a boarding school. When he returned the following summer, I was engaged to be married. He understood right away, and for a week he became so sad that I was very worried. On the morning of the 9th day, I saw a little paper under my door when I got up. I took it, opened it, and read, "You have left me, and you know what I said. You have sentenced me to death. Since I don't want to be found by anyone but you, come to the park where I told you last year that I loved you and look in the air." I thought that I was going crazy. I dressed as quickly as I could and ran wildly to the place he had mentioned. His little cap was on the ground in the mud. It had been raining all night. I looked up and saw something swinging among the leaves, for the wind was blowing hard. I don't know what I did after that. I must have screamed first, then fainted and fallen, and finally run to the house. The next thing I remember, I was in bed, with my mother sitting beside me. I thought that I had dreamed all this in a terrible nightmare. I stammered, "And what about him? What about him, Gontran?" There was no answer. It was true. I did not dare see him again, but I asked for a lock of his blonde hair. Here it is." And the old maid stretched out her trembling hand in a sad gesture. Then she blew her nose several times, wiped her eyes, and continued. "I broke off my marriage without saying why. And I have always remained the widow of this 13-year-old boy." Then her head fell on her chest, and she cried for a long time. As the guests were going to bed, a large man, whose quiet she had disturbed, whispered in his neighbor's ear, "Isn't it unfortunate to be so sentimental?